is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
And very pleasant. Good afternoon. Happy New Year. And let's get ready for just about 4 hours of talk and entertainment. We welcome you to the program. And, yes, we are on the air all 4 hours today, despite rumors to the contrary. We will dispense with the usual array of ESPN talking heads, analysts, smart guys. We will mainly talk to you today because there's obviously a great deal of anticipation in terms of the reaction, the commentary, and the aftermath. I was about to say in the wake of, but in the wake of gives it somewhat of a funereal tone, which we don't want to have today. We will take your phone calls beginning almost immediately at 855-242-7285. We'll get your reaction to what happened to Alabama, what happened to Auburn, what happened to LSU. Am I missing someone? I think I am. What happened to the SEC West? Well, I forgot the Mississippi schools. All of that on the program today. We had our film room last night during the game. For those of you who were watching, it was very entertaining, talking to Greg McElroy and Booger McFarland and callers as Alabama led, then fell behind, then came back, and then was finally beaten by Ohio State.
Yeah, we actually spent some time after the game when the result was final, speaking to the fans out there. So this isn't our first rodeo in this first segment. Heard a lot of criticism of Lane Kiffin last night on the Film Room Show, and a lot of callers from up north in Ohio. How many Big Ten fans are you expecting to speak with today?
Quite a few. And by the way, we don't discriminate on this show. Everyone's welcome to call in. We had a lot of Ohio State fans calling in, and welcome back to big-time college football, Buckeyes. And we'll keep doing that today. We're not going to waste a lot of time. You've heard what all the commentators and analysts have had to say. Let's listen to you. He was with us last night early in the game, and we tried to talk him off the ledge. Now he's trying to talk us off the ledge. Jim starts us off. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Paul. I just want to give you some sapient advice.
Yes.
You need to immediately, if not sooner, change your intro to the show. The STC is just better than everybody else.
It is, Jim. You know that.
I believe I'd change that. Maybe the Big Ten is better than everybody else. And, Matt, by the way, I hear you're writing a new book.
Yes, I am.
The Big Ten is the
By the way,
conference.
I will, I hate to use this to self-promote. I'll be doing a book signing tomorrow, where we will try to get rid of all the remaining copies of this book.
I've already announced, Paul. I've already announced that your book burning for your recent book that's a now disaster. The My Conference Can Beat Your Conference will be at Bryant-Denny tomorrow at 1:30.
But Jim, I do think you're a smart guy. Obviously, I'm not trying to push the book on anyone. But I am. Go to Amazon right now. Go to Amazon.com. If you're a Big Ten fan, buy it as a gag gift. I mean, everyone go buy it and give it to one of your buddies and have a good laugh, because that's all you can do right now.
You know what? That's the good that comes out of this, because there's a lot of laughter about the whole situation, because, it's just a football situation. Nobody got killed or died or anything, and I think people take football far too seriously. I know I used to, now I don't, but I'm thankful I don't. That is fun, though, but I'm going to tell you something. At times, Alabama at times in that game last night, the Ohio State University looked like the New England Patriots. Alabama looked like Furman. You know that. That's a fact.
Well, no, there's no doubt.
And one more thing, Paul. As of last night, I told you 6 years ago on the show, or 6 or 7 years ago on your other show, I said, this new guy, Urban Meyer, is the best coach in college football. And you didn't even know who he was. You remember that?
Well, I think,
But at the time, you barely knew who the guy was. I remember
when he was at Bowling Green or Utah?
Yeah, no, he had just gone to Utah.
Yeah, no, I knew him a little bit, but no, I didn't know.
So anyway, here's my point, Paul. At that time, he was the fastest upcoming and best coach in the country, and he became the best coach at Florida without a doubt. You even said that. Well, then Saban took over. Right now, Paul, suburban Urban Meyer is now surpassed Nick Saban as the best coach in the country?
Jim, I don't know. I think
I do know.
I think it's a really close. I think it's a close call.
No, it's not even arguable because what I saw last night.
It is arguable because Saban has 4 national championships. And
I know that. We're talking about past stuff, though. I'm talking about current. We're talking about today, not yesterday. You know, my daddy said, "Don't show your clips from yesterday."
Jim, and I'm not looking to argue with you, but if Urban loses badly to Oregon, can you still make that claim?
I don't think he will.
I don't know if he will or not. I wouldn't know how to predict a football game correctly if my life depended on it after yesterday. I have an open mind to it. I think it's worth conversing about. I'll say that.
Well, I say this. After I saw Oregon, the way they beat FSU last night, I thought there's nobody that can beat them. They're by far, and I said to myself, there's no doubt in my mind they were a far better team than Alabama. I'm talking about Oregon when I saw the game before I even saw the Alabama game. But when I saw the speed, I'm talking about the speed and the strength and the power and the way that Ohio State manhandled the defensive aspect of that Alabama game last night. Look, they are the best team in the country, in my opinion, or at least.
Well, listen, I don't know. I mean, the bottom line is we'll know next week.
That's right. They and Oregon are the class of the cream, and that's it.
Well, I mean, they're the 2 remaining. That's the way
well, we know that now, but Alabama is just drastically sunk from where they used to be. That's a fact. You know that. And I don't mind saying it.
That's okay.
And like Tubby told you, Paul, you can write that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Listen, the bottom line is they're playing for the national championship. I think it's pretty obvious. They're the 2 best teams at the moment, and that's all that matters. This is a playoff. This isn't a one-game season. If it had been a one-game season, Alabama may have won, and they would have likely beaten Florida State in the old BCS. But the old BCS, thankfully, is gone. Let's check in with Mickey in Georgia. Mickey, thanks for the phone call.
Hey, Paul, I know you're so glad that your book came out before this bowl season, aren't you?
Well, I mean, the book came out in August, so you have to have a sense of humor about it. It is pretty funny to think about, but I've said it all along. People came to us with this idea. We wrote it. We published
it's a great book.
To me, and by the way, I'm not backing off. I mean, there was a lot of debate about the title of the book. The initial decision was to make it more of a memoir of mine. I was the one who suggested we make it about how great the SEC is. It's certainly an impossible title to work with now, but really the book talks about the SEC. The title is a little more outrageous than the book really is.
Paul, don't you think that Urban Meyer has got himself an SEC football team?
No doubt. And that's why they so desperately wanted him. They had to change the conversation up there, and he did. And by the way, after spending a couple of days in New Orleans around Ohio State people, they don't think this is the team. They think it's next year. Now, we've heard that before with Alabama, but I mean, Ohio State, win or lose, is probably going to be the preseason number 1.
One more quick comment, if you don't mind, with the fact that I think that it was Alabama's worst game of the season last night. And with that being said, and the fact being that they almost pulled it out there at the end, and still almost beat Ohio State.
Let me ask you, that's one thing about Saban, though, that you have to appreciate. I mean, he does not get blown out like Bob Stoops or other people. I mean, if you look at all of his losses, and the Oklahoma game last year was deceiving. I mean, Alabama had the ball dry, with a chance to tie the game. I mean, Nick Saban is in every game, and that's why I mean, with a bad performance or not, and you're right. I mean, that was a horrific performance last night. And I'm still in shock over Urban not just running the clock out and giving Alabama the ball with 34 seconds to go, but Coach Spurrier used to do that. He let his ego sometimes get in the way.
I just can't see Ohio State staying on the field with Oregon.
I would struggle. I mean, I frankly, thanks for the call. I mean, I think Alabama. We were talking about that after the Oregon game. I think Alabama would have had a very difficult time with Oregon as well. Doesn't matter now. They're not going to play Oregon. Rich is in Atlanta. How are you, Rich?
I'm sick, Paul. How are you, bud?
Best day of my life.
Oh, Paul, I'm going to ask you something.
That's my new lease on life. Every day is going to be the best day.
Oh, man.
That's the name of my new book.
Hey, I'll buy it. Hey, when I look at the three best teams that are left, in my opinion, I mean, obviously got Oregon, Ohio State, and TCU. All three of them, offensively, their philosophies are uber aggressive. Now, do you ever think that Coach Saban and the rest of the SEC, for that matter, when you look at the quarterback play and then what's developed over the bowl season, would they ever consider changing their philosophies?
Well, I think Saban tweaked his philosophy. Certainly.
No, I mean, how about full bore?
Well,
how about going
listen, all I can say is a year ago, and you've heard me say this, Rich, he was distraught over what had happened. He made some adjustments. He made some changes. But, I'm more concerned about the Alabama defense than I am about the Alabama offense. I thought the offense, for the most part, put some numbers on the board this year. Even though last night was awkward, the defense was just abysmal, and everyone wants to talk about how Kirby Smart is this wonderkind. I don't know. I think Kirby Smart stock is in a free fall today.
Well, and I agree. I was going to get to the defense and the overall conservative approach. I mean, all those third and longs, they were in soft zones. There wasn't blitzes. There wasn't spies on the quarterback. I mean, it just seems like, and especially the critical junction, in my opinion, was that second quarter, the middle of the second quarter until the half, and then into the third quarter.
When have you seen that before? Like maybe a month ago?
Right, the Auburn game. And that's what I was thinking, that he was thinking maybe this is Auburn, they're just going to settle for field goals and we'll just score some touchdowns and beat them. And it kind of backfired. And again, I'm just thinking the conservative approach, it's a new world. I mean, you look at these other teams in these other conferences, they all have good quarterbacks and they're all extremely aggressive on offense.
Well, let me say one thing, though, and by the way, a lot of criticism of Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin prepared Blake Sims better than anyone in the country could have done. He made the decision to go with Blake. Blake still had some limitations that may or may not ever come out. But Kiffin worked through those, and he made it work to a point. Blake Sims made very few mistakes. He made one against Ole Miss. He made a few against Auburn. He made a few last night, and in the game last night, he paid the ultimate price.
No, I agree.
But by the way, Rich, thanks for the call. I was confused at the time because we were watching it, but and having seen the game again, Lane Kiffin didn't make the wrong call on that interception. He made the right call. The quarterback made the wrong throw. A lot to do today. We have only just begun. We'll take calls even from Ohio, assuming that anyone is up in Ohio or sobered up in Ohio. More to come.
This is the best of the Paul Feinbaum podcast.
Jacob Coker. Seems like a long time ago, but I'm not one of those who go back. I don't have to tell you what I said 3 months ago. I don't have to have somebody, John, remind you of all my quotes. Everyone remembers what I've said over the last couple of months. What did I say? Let's go to Glenn in Florida. How are you, Glenn?
Not really well today, Paul.
Okay. I am sorry to have asked.
Yeah. But first of all, Happy New Year to.
Happy New Year. It's been a great New Year so far.
Yeah, for some of us.
I'm trying to think what else could happen.
Happy New Year.
Maybe somebody. I don't even want to think about what else could happen.
Right.
The year's only 2 days old, and it seems like it's been on forever.
Paul, the studio's still here today, so that is a win.
Yeah.
Paul, I got couple points if you can hear me out here. One on the debacle in the City of Roses, and second on the nightcap last night in the Superdome.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, Kirk Herbstreit said something very interesting that I caught yesterday. I try to filter out a lot what Kirk says, to be honest with you. But I did catch this, and this really struck a chord with me. He said in the fourth quarter, about halfway through quarter number 4, that he sees a lot of our guys shutting it down. In other words, quitting. Well, I'll tell you what, Paul, that's exactly my sentiment over this. And that irritates me to no end. And I'll tell you why. I'll have to go back. The last time I saw this team quit was in a national title game in 1996 in the Superdome against Danny Werfel in Florida. We lost that one to the tune of 52-20.
Mm-hmm.
I saw those kids quit that night, and we made a whole bunch of excuses, nonsense excuses for losing that game. Well, we just got whipped. And let me say this, to be fair. Kudos to Mark Helfrich and his staff with the preparation they had. They did their homework. We obviously you can't turn the ball over in a bowl game. Can't turn the ball over in any game, Paul. We know that. But the quit issue is something that I'm concerned about that carrying over. Now, this is just my perception, Paul. But Herbie did say it as well. Not only did I see true freshmen quitting, and I could almost give a pass to those young men. All right, they're freshmen. They're frustrated. They don't have that seasoning behind them. If you get my
I do. I hear you.
Drift there. And but I saw fifth-year seniors, Paul, giving up. That's not who we are. And I will not to be Mr. Negative today. I'm trying to go into this new year with a glass half full attitude. But yesterday really strained me. And you can obviously.
Well, yeah, I think the only thing good that happened to FSU yesterday was Alabama, because otherwise that would be the entire conversation in the nation today, at least in relation to college football. Right. I didn't see a lot that I liked, but I made a decision. It's over, and I've had more than enough to say about FSU this year. I do think, in the big picture, that even though he's only lost once in 2 years, I think it will be very interesting to see how Jimbo Fisher reacts and moves on, because it's one thing to lose, Glenn. It's another thing to be humiliated, embarrassed, and have your dignity taken away, and that's exactly what happened.
Right. Well, Paul, here's and two quick thoughts, and I'll close here. And I agree with you. I think I have to take a look at Jimbo to see what he's going to do to fix a lazy defense. I don't know what happened with Charlie Kelly, and I respect Coach Kelly. He's only been there a year, granted, as the coordinator anyway. But I think maybe we might want to consider moving on from that and see. Coach Chiswick just took the job at NC, I see, and that's a good hire for them. Going on to Alabama real quick. I beat this from the whole season with the FSU defense. Coaches talk about the coach speak with gap integrity. Let me tell you something, Paul. You saw that game last night. And I was going to do a moratorium on that second game last night after the way I felt. But I watched it. I watched it from beginning to end. And I'll tell you what, I've never seen such an undisciplined Kirby Smart defense. What do you think about that?
No, I mean, they didn't tackle. They didn't execute. And this has been going on for a couple of years. If you go back even to the 12 season, Alabama's defense had incredibly bad stretches. They almost blew the Georgia game, if you remember, in the title game in Atlanta.
Right.
Last year, we saw it happen a number of times. I mean, this has been building. But Alabama, over the last couple of years, going back really 4 years, has really gotten away with things. They've been very fortunate to get breaks go their way in terms of other teams losing, breaks go their way in terms of opponents in the national championship game, and this year they were really on the edge all year long. And I did think that after watching Oregon yesterday that would be a brutally difficult matchup, but I still felt they could survive Ohio State. I was wrong, clearly, but so was everyone else. I mean, that's the thing that I like today. The early game, Oregon was the favorite. I took a flyer on FSU. A lot of other people did. No one took a flyer on Ohio State. I think there were 42 ESPN analysts polled. I think 41 picked Alabama to win, and I don't even remember who didn't, but it really doesn't matter. I mean, that's an overwhelming number. So it just, in talking to Ohio State fans in New Orleans, I mean, there was a chance. And I will say, not to sound like Urban Meyer last night, but when Wisconsin beat Auburn, I did go, ooh. I started to wonder after that game and after the Mississippi games, where does Alabama have a good win? And the truth of the matter is they really didn't. And that began to give a little pause. A lot of my friends, Colin Cowherd, I was on with him earlier, Cannell, they've been pointing this out all year, and some of us heard what they said, but kept saying to ourselves, hey, the SEC is this. I mean, I was not that much into Tank, in spite of public opinion for the SEC in relation to absolute dominance. I mean, this was a weird year, and the Mississippi schools collapse was the first sign of the dam break. LSU, a couple of other places, Missouri on the other side. But I did start thinking a little bit yesterday that what does Alabama have to show for this season? What is Alabama's best win? Arkansas?
It was the same story.
I mean, Mississippi State's not a big win anymore.
Their best wins were big-time wins, blowouts at home. Yeah. Other than that, you saw what you saw last night. On a neutral field on the road, they struggled all season long.
And, the postmortem on this season, you can spin it any way you want. 12-2, SEC championship, whatever. But the nation is rejoicing, and that's the hardest part, I think, for SEC fans today. And by the way, the nation ought to rejoice. I mean, we've had a good bit of beating of chest in this part of the country. When we come back, one of the most anticipated moments in radio, television history, Phyllis Famulga, who had a half-page article today in the New York Times on her. I've never had that. She will join us next.
This is the best of the Paul Feinbaum podcast.
It was on Colin Cowherd today, and he was feeling no pain. He trashed the SEC. He trashed the Saban dynasty. He trashed Phyllis Famulga. Phyllis Famulga is next.
Hey, Paul.
Hi.
First of all, hey, Cowturd, you better shut your freaking mouth. You understand me, you little weasel? Let's have a bowl game of our own. We could call it the Cowturd Bowl. And I guess I'll walk away with a stink award. But, Paul, let me ask you something. Do you think that Alabama played mediocre teams this year? Do you think any of the teams that Alabama played
I didn't think they played. I mean, they beat the number one team in the country. But, where is Mississippi State going to finish is really what most people are going to ask. I mean, Alabama played the schedule it had. It had no control over the schedule. At the time, Alabama played a number of teams. They were good, but the SEC West, cliche of the year, cannibalized itself. But the SEC West was a disaster in the postseason, which is what people remember going into the next year.
Well, I don't care what people remember.
All LSU had to do was win its bowl game. I mean, Auburn had to win its bowl game.
They won the SEC championship.
Okay.
That was a great feat. Okay. I don't care what anybody thinks.
Hey, Phyllis.
Or anybody else. Canals, you name them. I don't care what they think. Alabama was good this year. Alabama played their hearts out. They won 12 freaking games. You can't take that away from them, Paul. My God, yes, they're not going to vie for the national championship. They lost last night, but I'm proud. I'm proud of every single game they won this year. And I don't care what the naysayers say. They can kiss my butt. I really don't care. But Alabama is still going to be the team to beat. Next year, we are loaded, people. So is the SEC. So come this way. Just come this way one more time. How about the SEC when it was riding its glory? When you wrote the book, Paul, SEC was riding high. A few games cannot make the SEC look bad. You hear me, Cowturd? The SEC don't look bad, not because of something you say. Nobody's going to take your word at heart. I certainly am not. I'm proud of Bama. Thank you, Bama, for the season you've had. I will never forget it, and I'm looking forward to next year. And, Paul, Bama did great. I'm proud of them. And roll damn Tide. That's all I can say is roll Tide. Bye.
Thank you, Phyllis. Hi, man, is next in Montgomery, Alabama.
Live from the capital city. Look, it's great. Get off of them, people. Get off of them. Oh, Alabama got their ass wet. They wasn't coming back. Auburn was playing at least in the overtime. They were playing for the win. Ohio State kicked the world saw it. Listen, my people, we was playing so we won 12 games. They won 12. Did you hear that? We down the road to no damn where. But we bounded it anyway. Well, you know, this whole off season, the Bombers will continue to be in a bowl game. Bowl. Poor damn Eagle.
Congratulations on the runner-up finish against Wisconsin in the Outback Bowl. My man. Oh. Albert is in Columbus, Ohio.
Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you.
First-time caller. Welcome up here to Buckeye Land and the SEC Network to ESPN. It's good to have you up here. I grew up down south, Louisville, Kentucky, and I was a Georgia football fan for a long time. I will say this much. I have a real hard time with Nick Saban at this point. His ego keeps writing checks that his team can't cash, especially when it gets into a clutch situation. And I just cannot understand this. I mean, he did this with Auburn. He did this last night, and I am so sorry for Alabama for essentially what happened. But we really didn't start beating you guys until second quarter, because that usually is what happens with Big Ten teams. We're all second quarter stuff. Ohio State, Wisconsin, Michigan State. And when Bo Schembechler was still alive, it was that team up north that sometimes would go through and actually play a decent second quarter game. But here, the issue I'm seeing here is I'm seeing Urban Meyer trying to go through and remake not only Ohio State, but possibly the entire Big Ten if everybody else decides to wake up here in the SEC's image. To only make the difference between us and them essentially the palm trees.
No, I think you're right. Listen, we made a lot out of Harbaugh going to Michigan, but it's a game changer. You're talking about two heavyweight coaches, two heavyweight programs, and it's hard to take the Big Ten seriously overall, or it has been difficult when Michigan has been non-existent.
Oh, God. Essentially, it's been us and them for decades, for centuries. They lost the battle. They lost the battle of the Maumee River, and they haven't given it up since then. So.
Well, and hey, listen, I'm really glad to hear from you. Good luck out in Dallas. We're doing something today that I don't think we have done in a very long time. We are guest free. It's all yours today. We're taking phone calls because that's what the show is built on, based on, and the Vox Populi will speak today, and we are 40 minutes in, and has not been disappointing. Let's continue with more phone calls. Ron is in Ocala, Florida. How are you, Ron?
Man, I'm great, Paul. So excited to talk to you for the second time.
Thank you.
Spread a little wisdom on this whole situation, the mess we were looking at yesterday. Yeah, so, I was looking at the Alabama game, and I remember we were talking last time, and I was telling you about the 09. Remember the 09 game for Urban Meyer?
I remember every game.
In that game, I remember watching Urban have the collapse and Tebow crying. So right there,
let me jump in here for a second, Ron, okay? I think it's time for Alabama fans to move on from, we made Urban nearly die and Tebow cry. I mean, that is so 2009. It's 2015. That didn't matter. That didn't make any difference last night. So come on.
Yeah.
Let's stay in the moment here. Let's keep it real. I don't care about what happened in 2009. LP is in New Orleans. How are you, LP?
I'm good, Paul. I'm glad you shut that off because this SEC talk for the years. First of all, I'm a first-time caller, and I've been listening to you for a long time. I listened to you on the road one time I was riding through Alabama, and every time I used to go through, I used to try and listen for you. But now I'm from Ohio, living in the middle of SEC country in Mississippi. I'm in New Orleans right now. You got LSU on one side, Alabama on the other side. all this talk, especially after the national championships that we lost to Florida and Florida State, we got our ass, we got our butts whipped bad.
We heard you the first time.
But to forget about the Tressel years, like Ohio State has just came on the scene or something, you know what I'm saying? We have been on here for a while. And to listen to it, and I love the SEC Network, don't get me wrong, to listen last night to my favorite two new hosts, the Big Swagoo and Tebow, talked like the SEC just happened to not show up or happened to be sick or just, just didn't play their best game. You know what I'm saying? This is the SEC West, and they all got their butts tore up, and all they want to talk about.
Something, LP. I started the day with Tim and Marcus in New Orleans, and this is the big leagues. I don't really care about. I can't tell you how many times I've sat there this year with my colleagues and people pound their fists and say this is the best conference in America. Well, you had an opportunity to prove it, and guess what? You didn't.
True. Very, very, very true. But give credit, do where credit is due. Ohio State put 230 yards rushing on the baddest rushing defense in the country.
Without a doubt.
First of all, you remember Michigan State? What were they ranked when we played them on defense? What was Wisconsin's ranked when we played them on defense? We can score on anybody. Give Ohio State credit. Our history speaks for itself. We don't take a backseat to nobody.
No, that's a really good point.
The future is
Ohio
bright,
State's
like
won.
Urban said. The future is bright. And the only thing Phyllis said that is right, is that the dynasty has just begun. Go Buckeyes. OHIO.
Good to hear from you. And the narrative about the Saban dynasty is over, and I was one who said, hold on a second. Well, 2 years without a national championship. I know I'm being a little top-heavy there, but is it still a dynasty when you haven't won a national championship over the last 2 years, when you've lost 2 consecutive bowl games?
This is the best of the Paul Feinbaum podcast.
And we welcome you back, second hour, and the University of Tennessee is saying, hey, do not include us with all those other SEC schools. We're in the SEC East. We're the best part of the SEC. We haven't lost a conference game. Tennessee is rolling right now against the Big Ten? Is that possible? Tennessee down in Jacksonville leading, is this game in Jacksonville? I've lost track of where the game is. The Tax Slayer Bowl, yeah. 21-0 right now over Iowa. Putting a beat down on the Big Ten. Thank you, Tennessee. It's really going to matter a lot. Tammy is up next. Good afternoon.
Paul, good afternoon. Now, let me just tell you something, Paul Feinbaum. You know what? You can sit up there and behind your little stool and you can say what you want to say because your opinion, it matters like everybody else's. But let me tell you something. Just because we lost most of us, quote, ain't but 1 or 2 won, maybe 2s right now. If Tennessee, that'd be 3. But let me tell you something. That guy made a great point, that little young guy a while ago, and you're going to call us loser talk? Are you for real? You're going to say loser talk? Did you realize how many years it's been since a Big 12, a Pac-10, or a Big 10, or any other ACC has went and done what we've done for the last 15 years or so? And you're going to tell me loser talk because they have one good
Tammy,
year?
your team lost 5 games this year. What am I supposed to say?
I don't care how many games we lost. We play the SEC. Every game we play SEC teams. Our conference, I don't care what you say.
Well, Tammy, a slight correction. You weren't playing SEC schools yesterday and the day before.
We weren't playing SEC schools, but you know what? Just like I said, those schools out there, Oregon can beat anybody. I told you that other day. Okay. Oregon is going to win the national championship.
What about Wisconsin? A team that Tammy, do you realize Auburn lost to a school that lost 59-0?
I don't care if we lost 59-0 or not. Hell, we lost a couple of games ourselves like this, almost. But let me tell you something. It doesn't mean that their conference is better.
You lost 5 of the last 8 games.
Paul Feinbaum, listen to me. It means that their
5 of the last 8 games. Is it time to give Gus a raise?
Oh my God! I'm giving them touches. If you shut your mouth for a minute, if you listen to me, Paul Feinbaum. Those teams that won yesterday.
5 of the last 8, Tammy.
To win because they beat an SEC team. That's what they got.
You lost to Wisconsin. You lost to a 100-year-old coach.
I don't give a crap what you say, Bob.
You lost to Barry Alvarez. His last win until yesterday was over Tommy Tuberville.
Paul, listen, we're still the best conference. Did you understand? I don't care who we lost to. I don't care how many times. And as far as Alabama goes, how I wanted them to lose. So Ohio State deserved everything they got. They ran all over Alabama's defense. Can you say that they ran all over Alabama's defense? Alabama wasn't down. Ohio State was better. Just like Wisconsin was better. It don't matter. They got 1 year out of 15 or 20. Good luck to you, because it ain't going to happen no more. You better enjoy this year. Other conferences, SEC still rules. SEC is still the best, and one damn Eagle.
Ah, the SEC. Ruthie is in Akron. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Paul. I have two things to relay. First of all, to Tammy, who was our last caller. You know what? I appreciate the fact that she rooted for the Ohio State University. And my second message that I'd like to replay is Phyllis, kiss my Buckeye butt.
Thank you.
There you go, Paul. And Happy New Year. And I listen to your show every day, and I love it.
Thank you very much, Ruthie. Good to hear from you. Sean is in Philadelphia. Hello, Sean.
Hi, my name's Sean, and I suck at picking ball games.
Join the club. I'm a charter member.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm starting a new fraternity here. But I just want to say...
By the way, I suck at picking regular season games, too.
I just want to say that I don't think the perception that the SEC is dominant is just down there. I mean, most people agree for
listen, that's not really an argument.
They only got to look the other way for a little while, that's all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ironic.
But by the way, anyone who has to make that case is wasting breath. I mean, I think most people accept it. It really isn't worth arguing. It's like when you have to tell someone, hey, I'm really good at golf. Well, go prove it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just ironic, I guess, that Urban Meyer kind of started this run back in 06.
It's his fault.
It is his fault. You're right. And now they kind of put an end to it for now. And let's just see if they can.
Well, it's funny though. He started it, as you remember, beating Ohio State, which was a prohibitive favorite over the Gators, and
that's what really.
He ended it at Ohio State.
Same thing. He ended it same thing. They were favored, and I mean Alabama was favored, and no one thought that was going to happen. And I kind of felt like you said it. In the beginning, I picked every SEC team, but then as the weekend was getting
it started to get Ole Miss was probably the team I was bailing on the quickest, just hearing some scuttlebutt a couple of days ago. But again, that's all a memory now, and it is ironic. I mean, we laughed at the SEC East all year, and they're holding up their part of the bargain. And the postseason matters. It matters in perception. Because this is we have a lot of time this time of the year, and we talk about stuff like this, and you cement perceptions against other leagues. That's same way in college basketball. Corey is in California. Corey, afternoon.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Okay, thank you.
Hey, I'm from California, so I'm not from down south. I'm not a SEC component here. I'm a Pac-12 man. And I just want to based on what I'm hearing a lot of people say and everything like that, I just want to mark a couple things. The SEC is a good conference, and I do give them that. But I think that especially this year, when you saw the college football season kick off, you saw a certain difference with so many teams, because with this new playoff system, it now allows for a team that wouldn't have been in the national championship to be in the national championship.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I congratulate that so much, because what you're going to see is that I think SEC teams have gotten a pass for the sake of being an SEC team. So the whole argument I've been hearing.
Well, but hold on one second though. I mean, SEC teams have gotten a pass, but let's not forget why the league became the dominant conference. 7 straight BCS wins was what this is all about. and then 8 straight appearances. And on top of that, last year, in spite of Auburn losing to FSU, the SEC had 3 of the top 5 in the country. Did really well in bowl games. Of course, lost to 2 BCS, but won virtually everything else. This year, when you lose like the SEC did on Tuesday and Wednesday, it becomes a conversation. And then when Alabama loses in the ultimate game, it becomes it cements the perception. So people start talking about it.
The point that I'm getting at is this right here. If the BCS had his way this year, it would have been an SEC team, ACC team in there.
And by the way, I think in Alabama, in my mind, would have beaten Florida State and continued this.
And that gives the SEC another rung to hang its hat on. But the playoffs change all that, and I think that's what you're going to start seeing, because the Big Ten is a good conference. They had 3 or 4 teams that played bowl games this year. Pac-12 is a very good conference.
Yeah, but the Big Ten though is an emerging. It's re-emerging. But the Big Ten. I mean, listen, I'm with people that know college football every weekend, or they think they know it, and by mid-season, the Big Ten was laughed at. They were done, and that's why I think this is so remarkable. The Big Ten's out after the Virginia. I mean, go back and watch a bunch of college football analysts on the 2nd or 3rd week of the season. Everyone would say, Big Ten's gone. Big Ten is done. Stick a fork in them. Michigan State lost to Oregon, and then, of course, Ohio State lost to Virginia Tech. But Big Ten's still alive. And that's the hard part of what we do. We make a lot of generalizations, and you pay for them at the end of the season. Andrew is up next. Good afternoon, Andrew.
Good afternoon, Paul. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
I think one of the reasons you're having a problem agreeing with the commentary today is because I think you're just seeing cognitive dissonance at its best. This is the biggest after-party hangover that the SEC has seen in a very long time. And, I think it's just a lot of people, when you have so much success for so long, it's hard to lose at all. And then when you lose in the big games at the end of the year, it's just, a 1-2 punch, and it's really hard for people to deal with. And my God, at the beginning of the year, Mississippi on both sides was at the very top, and now, goodness, they've fallen.
Well, no, you're right. I mean, of all the schools that have fallen, now again, Alabama is number one because Alabama started the season among the favorites, but the Mississippi schools, I think, took maybe one of the worst psychological beatings because they own the month of October, and it was all new, it was exciting, it was never before having happened, and it's all gone now.
Right. And I also believe that there was, I don't know if it was just me, but it seemed like there was a lot of injuries in a lot of bowl games this year, more than I remember. And
well, let me say this, Andrew, and I don't really want to do this, but there are specific reasons for some of the losses. I mean, Ole Miss, I'm not making excuses for them, but I mean they lost their most important player. Their defense got gashed and beaten up, and they also. They just weren't the same. Mississippi State, what happened to them? They lost their defensive coach, their coordinator. I mean, these things really do matter, and but they don't matter enough because all fans see are the final score, and that's what you are ultimately judged by, and you can't talk your way out of it. It's the same way in life. You're asked to do a job no matter where you work, and if you don't do it, then you're evaluated. You can't say, well, hey. My dog's been sick and I had to stay up all night. Yeah, okay, well, great. We're sorry, but you didn't do your job. We'll take a short break. Bob Stoops has to be pretty happy. He's not the most humiliated coach in America right now.
This is the best of the Paul Feinbaum podcast.
A lot of attention being paid to our show today. Just got off the phone with this largest newspaper. They're all monitoring us. It's what happens the day after. A lot of people enjoy rubbernecking at an accident or a train wreck. That's what's happening here today. I'm pausing because of the next caller. Trying to collect myself, because this is a call that I predicted weeks ago that would not go down well with our core listeners. Andy is next from Ohio.
FCC!
Well, it's been a long time coming, and how sweet it is. Oh,
you know how to ruin a man's day, don't you?
I have. Well, I tried to ruin part of your night last night, too.
You did.
A little call
You pretty much ruined my entire life, Andy.
Well, I do what I can. I've dealt with quite literally years of abuse here on the program, and I've stuck it all out. And my, isn't it sweet today? Isn't it worth it? You could just feel it. Ohio State was just the better team. And, anyone who wants to say, the crazy Tammies of the world, the SEC isn't down. I mean, they lost essentially all of their major bowl games in the last 2 years now. I mean, hey, Paul, how many SEC West teams should we put in the playoffs this year? 2 or 3? Well, it's good that it wasn't 3 because you can't have 3 teams lose in a 2-team playoff, and that's apparently what would happen with the way they've turned out. It was just an amazing game.
We joked at one point that it ought to be 4 SEC schools.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, at one point, what did the SEC have? All 4, the top 4 teams?
Oh, I
think 1 week it did, yeah. 4 of the top 5.
And for everybody who doesn't think that the postseason matters, wait and see how it's reflected in the preseason rankings. I can tell you from experience, it matters, and it matters very much, especially when you have this happen a couple of years running. In Mississippi schools, woo, that was a flash in the pan. You freeze. Good thing they cut you that check when they cut you that check, Hugh. And I don't know. I enjoyed seeing Art Roberts.
The thing that ticks me off, Andy, is I made the decision on October 4th to do a book on the state of Mississippi and football, and now it's all gone.
Oh yeah.
Well, one Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. That was the name of the book.
Yeah, well, you can do it, but you just have to talk about the segregation days.
Yeah, I've decided since the first book crashed and burned, the second book, I think I'm just going to do a book on the brilliance of Obama's second term.
Well, you could rename the book, The Ghosts of Mississippi.
That's original.
That one's already taken.
Yeah.
It could be applicable in this context, but no, it was.
I am glad that I bailed on the Saban biography.
What's that? How to hold a fan base hostage and get rich in the process? Is that the name of the biography?
That was the name of it. Yes.
How to collectively have an entire state, generate.
Andy, you think it'll be Monday? You think it'll be Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday when we start seeing his name connected with about 4 or 5 NFL jobs?
Oh, I tried to get in last night. It's a good thing you didn't pick up my last call because it would have been brought to you by Left Hand Brewing Company and the good people at Bullet Distillery. But I was going to say, the new Nick Saban cheer, Jets, Jets. Hey, I guess in closing, everybody made a lot of jokes about Urban Meyer needing to go to the hospital, needing to quit, and needing to cry, and everything else. And we didn't make Nick Saban do any of that, mainly because,
Well, by the way, the weekend is early. It's still young.
Well, evil cyborgs from the future can't cry, and I don't.
Yeah, I think Urban went the next night, so I assume Nick's back in Tuscaloosa tonight. And
what we did get Nick Saban to do though is we got him to say in the post game, "You don't need a trophy to be a champion."
Right. Saban said my guys are still winners, even though you don't. Sure, Nick. We buy that one.
How's that playing with Bammer Nation?
I wonder when. By the way, I wonder when recruits come to visit Tuscaloosa. Do you think he just takes them into the winners gallery, or the Walk of Champions, where all the national championships are posted?
Well, it was all a good time. I'm glad it all happened. The one thing I am a little scared about is we did have some Ohio State fans stop there on the way down and put some Ohio State jerseys, some Urban Meyer jerseys, some Buckeye necklaces around Coach Saban's shrine.
By the way, don't worry, Harvey. I think Harvey Updike is cannot leave the state of Louisiana, so there's no fear in Perrysburg, Ohio, that your trees will be poisoned. Larry is up next. I hope Harvey enjoyed the game last night. Larry in Missouri, how are you, bud?
Hey, Mr. Feinbaum, how you getting along today?
Horrible.
Hey, great. Hey, well, you got a high comedy show today. I really enjoyed I think old Sturdy Lubin said it best when he said, "See the big man cry, Mama." I mean, that's all I can hear on here today. I mean, there's been so many myths shattered here today. Like when you give Shorty 30 days, ain't nobody can beat him. That's crumbled to dust. He's some sort of defensive genius. That's crumbled to dust. I mean, it appears to me that it's clear that probably Georgia is the new favorite next year in SEC. But I did want to give him at least props. And I will say the last thing I'm sure that Shorty heard New Orleans was the last words I heard down there when I was passed out in the gutter in front of Johnny White. You just have the fans. Thanks, Paul. Boomer Sooner.
Boomer Sooner. Well, the Phyllis call has already gone viral. I just looked up at the Sports Center ticker, and it's coming up next on ESPN News. So for those of you who didn't hear it, you can watch Sports Center on news and see it in a moment.
He's unbelievable. What's that today? New York Times, The Herd with Colin Cowherd, The Paul Feinbaum Show, Sports Center. My goodness.
Letterman's only got 6 more months before he retires. I'm still thinking that she could end up there. Anyway, we'll continue with more phone calls and comments about how great the SEC is. My conference can beat your conference. Why the Big Ten still rules college football.
This is the best of the Paul Feinbaum podcast.
We have been here 2 hours, as hard as that is for me to believe. It seems like we've been here 24 hours. We welcome you back on the second day of 2015. Man, hard to believe that we are here, and we've been taking your phone calls for the last 2 hours. I mentioned this at the very beginning, that no guests today, it's all calls. And it's been a remarkable day. Tammy's called, Phyllis has called, Jim's called, a lot of Ohio State fans have called. And next up, Perkins in Montgomery, Alabama.
Great show you got today, brother.
Thank you,
Happy
Perkins.
New Year, Feinbaum.
Happy New Year, man.
Hey, boy, I tell you, Tennessee really taking us out, isn't it? 35-7.
Man,
wow. Look like the East got the last laugh, huh, Feinbaum?
I think just get Florida to win that all-important Birmingham Bowl tomorrow.
Oh, man. Yeah, but, you know, that was a great game last night between Ohio State and Alabama. You know, like you said, you got to execute. You can be a great coach, but your team really got to have good execution.
Sure. Absolutely.
And particularly Alabama's secondary is their weakness. Clearly, you know, Alabama should just kept running the football, just keep feeding the ball to Henry. That's all they had to do, you know. But give Urban Miles credit on Ohio State. Urban Miles is a great coach, and I do think Paul really do think from here on out, I think the Big Ten will reemerge with the addition of Urban Miles. You got Harbaugh and you got James Franklin, so I think that conference should be back. But what now? You know, Paul, with these bowl games, the SEC loss, particularly the West. Now, what do you think the perception is going to be about the SEC now? What's your thoughts on that?
The SEC was dinged last year because Alabama and Auburn lost, but it still felt big, and it proved itself until lately. I think the question now is what happens in Dallas if Oregon wins. You are going to have a raging conversation about the Pac-12. It's still hard to make a case for the Big Ten, with all due respect, and I say that because the Big Ten has acquitted itself, but not very much to show for. But again, I think it's on. You know, the SEC people can beat their chests. SEC has its own network right now, but it is a legitimate debate, particularly if Oregon wins, and particularly if Oregon wins convincingly.
And if Ohio State wins, Paul, that definitely changed the game with the Big Ten.
It does. It changes it as well. And, you know, where does that put Urban Meyer with 3 national championships? Will his 3 at 2 different schools trump Saban's 4 at 2 different schools?
Hey, that's a good question.
It's you know, considering they're now, and you know, I look at the title games. I don't really care that Saban beat Urban Meyer on the first Saturday night in October in 2010 in a game and with a team that wasn't very good. I care about the two national semifinals in 08 and 09 and the one last night. To me, Urban Meyer now has the edge on Saban 2-1.
And you notice, Paul, every time Nick Saban, whoever wins the game between Saban and Urban Meyer, they go on to win the national championship.
Yeah. And you know, I've covered Saban, you know, as everyone has since 2007. The most devastating loss, I've always thought, and the Auburn game is a little bit of a hard one to gauge, but just in terms of the hollow feeling, was the 08 Florida game, because that was such a big game. The Auburn game is on the same plane, but it's more because of Auburn and the way it happened. I mean, the two are similar. I mean, Auburn's the worst loss in Alabama history.
Absolutely.
But
before I go,
but the other game was a very. This game last night reminded me a lot of that game because you walked out and you just felt like somebody had sucker punched you as opposed to run you over.
Totally devastating. Paul, before I go, the great Bill Walsh always said, he said the essence of coaching is isolating the skills that are needed in the game of football and finding the best drills to teach those skills. Feinbaum out. Have a good one, brother.
Great call. Absolutely. And one of the all-time coaches. Denise in where else? Ohio.
You better know it. Let me just say I love you. Even though you clearly cheer for the wrong conference.
I'm thinking about moving to Cleveland. I've always, wanted to enjoy the beauty of living on the lake.
Yeah, let me tell you, it breeds a hardy folk. It's hard for us to, feel sorry for you 85 degrees down there. So
yeah, right.
It breeds a hardy folk. So let me just say, I was talking to someone, they asked you the question that you want to say before you come on. And I said to them, so much of this year for Ohio State has been, one shot after another shot. 10 days before the season started, we lost, a possible Heisman Trophy candidate in Braxton, and we thought, oh, God. And then we got JT, and he came out in the first game and looked real shaky. And then the second game, we lost to West Virginia. I think we were like number 6 then, and they dropped us down to 22. So we had to fight our way all the way back up with JT. And then we thought we were good. And then JT goes down with his ankle, and we're thinking, oh, my God, who is this other person? So they bring in Cardale. Cardale goes in and wipes out Wisconsin 59-0. And we're like, okay, we get into the tournament, and, oh, God, we started listening to you guys. Oh, no, we have to play Alabama. It's like, God, we have to play God. And what I'm finding is all those games that we were supposed to lose, according to ESPN analysts, because we were supposed to lose to Michigan State, we were supposed to lose to Wisconsin, we were supposed to lose to Alabama. So every time you guys pick us to lose, it works to our advantage. So please keep picking Oregon to beat us, because
we will be happy to satisfy you on that.
It's working for us. But I just want to say also that the reason why everybody, I think, today outside of the SEC is so happy that the SEC won is because it's this aura of we're so much better than everyone else. You guys don't love who you love. You should love us because we're the winners. And for the lowly Big Ten, as what what everybody keeps saying, we're the worst conference. We got really bad teams, but we beat all your teams. So what does that say about you? If we're bad, according to the records from yesterday and this bowl season, you're worse.
Not really sure how to respond to that. Thank you for the call. Appreciate it. Drew is next up in Sikeston, Missouri. Hello, Drew.
Hello, Feinbaum.
Afternoon.
Can we get a round of applause for a lot of the great football that we saw over this past week? I mean, come on. Some of the most exciting, greatest bowls were played in the first ever college football playoff bowl season. I can't wait until 10 years from now.
And some of the worst as well.
Yeah, some of the worst. But these teams fought hard. They played hard. Exception Ole Miss. They never gave up, though. But honestly, where's this going to lay us in 10 years when we're in a 16-team bowl playoff championship, Big Ten, Pac-12? I mean, we may have teams from the OVC Man, I'm so excited, and I'm glad this new era started. I mean, damn, man, this is some great football, and keep it up. Good job, committee.
Thank you. Appreciate the call. K-Dub, just back from New Orleans, or I assume you're back.
Yeah, I'm back, babe. I came back last night. It was a long, rainy trip back. Man, I called you on the film room and told you this, and I still say it, man. It just looked like they didn't want to tackle that big boy. I just don't understand it. They don't look like they want to tackle that guy at all. I do want to set a couple of things straight. And I mean, I understand the mantra of what's really going on. Believe me, if any fan understands, it's me. And I know I won't make ESPN. I'm not going to trend because, you know, I don't, you know, go all off into, you know, the yelling and the screaming and this, that, and the other. I think you understand where I'm going with that. But look, this whole thing about Ohio State players outplayed us. I don't necessarily think it was a out coaching job, because if you get out coached, you're gonna get beat by 20, 30 points or something like that. That's just my opinion. My opinion could be wrong. I think they players outplayed
your
our
opinion
players.
is wrong, but keep going.
You had to slide one in on me. You had to. You don't think that you think that it was just a total out coaching job that Urban Meyer was just
listen, by the way, that's a cliche to say someone was out coached, but you know, coaching involves not only play selection but preparation and execution. The coach is responsible for the execution, and knowing if your quarterback is shaky, which he clearly was, Dub, then why do you risk a situation when I think you would agree all Alabama had to do was pound the ball at that point in time, and I think they would have at least been in a very strong position to win the game.
And I want to say this, I can agree with that, and I totally agree with that. But, you know, like you said, it is a cliche, but, it's hard to put your finger on it. I'm just going to be honest.
Let me make it simple for you, Dub. And I know you're a fan, and you're a great fan. It really just doesn't matter now.
It don't.
And that's one thing I have learned, and I've been there like you have. I had this happened to me a couple of years ago when Alabama lost to LSU. I was dealing with some people in New York for at Sports Illustrated, and I wrote a piece for them that said Alabama is still the best team in the country, and they laughed at me. They said, "You can't write that." I said, "Well, you're paying me to give you my opinion." They said, "Well, that's ridiculous. You're just an Alabama guy." I'm like going, "Why'd you hire me?" I mean, you knew that, and guess what? You knew that walking out of the stadium that Saturday night. Alabama was better than LSU, and they got a chance to prove it. Well, when it's the final game, it really doesn't matter because you can't. There's nowhere else to go for Alabama. It's over.
Yes, that is very much correct. That is very much correct. Let me ask you this. And I hear this whole thing about, and I understand because nobody cares.
By the way,
about
for you people
Auburn.
who don't know what I was talking about, Alabama lost to LSU in overtime at Bryant-Denny Stadium. They rematched in the national championship game, and Alabama won the game convincingly.
Yes. Let me ask you this, and I don't want you to take this as I'm talking to you. I'm talking to a couple of other analysts and stuff like this.
Okay.
Because I know what your deal is. I know you're gonna be with who's hot and who's not, and people call you a BAM, and that's not true. You just a straight up SEC person. If we winning, you with us. If you're not, you're gonna let us know about it. But I want to ask you this: who did we really let down? Because Auburn fans are not mad. LSU fans are not mad. Do you think we just really let down a few commentators who love to brag on how great the SEC is?
I don't think any. Listen, outside of Alabama fans, no one cares what happened to Alabama. I don't think the fan bases at Oxford and Starkville and Baton Rouge and Fayetteville are really crying about what happened to Alabama. They don't like the narrative of the SEC getting hammered, but the only people that really care about what happened in New Orleans from a law standpoint are the Alabama fans.
That's correct. And I want to say this one more thing to it. And it was ironic that you said that because I'm coming out of the stadium and this one guy, he's just whooping it up. Now, he don't have a colors on anybody. He don't have no crimson on or scarlet. So he's just, how does it feel, Bama? How does it feel now, baby? How does it feel? So me just being me, I just want to say, well, you know this is just a semifinal game. You haven't won the championship yet. He said, oh, no, don't get it confused. I'm an LSU fan. I'm happy. He said, I'm happy you lost. How does it feel? I was like, well, it kind of feel like how we beat you then. But I just wanted to get that. It's not.
No, that's fine. K-Dub, I'm glad you made it back safely. We'll take a short break. Back with more phone calls.
This is the best of the Paul Feinbaum podcast.
Welcome back in as we continue on our call-only day. We don't do this very often. That's not going to handle this very often. But we're doing it today for very good reason. Steve is next in Kansas City. How are you, Steve?
I'm great, Paul. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
I'm sitting here watching you as the calls come in, and I've got to tell you, this is really cheap entertainment. It's hilarious. I love to watch how you react to some of these calls. You should be committed. I mean, you should be commended.
I think you had it right the first time.
I'm 70 years old. I've been a college football fan all my life, and I wondered if you could give some historical perspective on where did this SEC branding become so relevant that at every stadium, whenever they beat somebody out of conference, that SEC yell.
Steve, it's a new thing. And I can't pinpoint the moment, although it's worth researching, when the SEC got on this roll of 7 in a row, somewhere in there that it started, and it never stopped. And I would agree with you. I find it to be pretty annoying. And I say that as someone who at least perceptively is the biggest cheerleader in the world for the SEC. Now, that's the perception. I don't create perception, and I help make it worse by two things. Number one, going to work for the SEC Network, and at the same time publishing a book talking about the SEC. The big misconception, though, and is that the book that Gene Wojciechowski and I wrote, it's really not. Most of the stuff about the SEC is tongue-in-cheek. The book's really a journey of my life and how it intersects with the SEC. It's not a let me give you chapter 1, 2, 3, 4 and beat you over the head. The first chapter is really more of a fun, in-your-face, bravado, man on steroids, satirical look at where the SEC has been over these last 7 years. So that's a little bit of the backstory. I find it pretty annoying too. But on the other hand, the "We Want Bama" chant that started with Oregon fans, and they continue to be denied the opportunity to beat Bama.
Well, I can certainly understand that. The reason I brought it up is being from the Midwest, and do you think we're overly defensive of the Big Ten Conference? Do you think the Big Ten fans are overly defensive?
A little bit. And let me make one more reference back to the SEC versus the world. When going back to the aforementioned book that I mentioned, the premise of the book was really the SEC versus the Big Ten, and we did a comparison chapter. The problem was when the book came out, the Big Ten was dead, but it shows you how things change. The Big Ten has gone through several, the worst 4 or 5 years I've ever seen, and the SEC fans started taunting the Big Ten, and that's why I used the phrase earlier on ESPN. That's why there's so much Schadenfreude going on right now. I mean, there is such pleasure in beating the SEC. And guess who's responsible for that? You already know, Steve. The SEC. We brought it upon ourselves.
Well, I guess that's where I was headed. It is so tiresome and loathsome to hear that, because you're the only conference of all of them that doesn't. And I think, I'm not going to speak for all of America. I'm certainly not that naive. But the majority of America is probably, not that they're all rooting for Ohio State, but I think they're going to root for anybody but the SEC, unless you're from the southeastern part of the United States, because people are I think they've had enough of that. It sounds so arrogant.
I think so. Thank you very much for the call, Stephen. I talked about this in some forums earlier today, and I'm serious that whatever's happening around the country today, all of this SEC talk, most of it's deserved. I know folks get defensive and want to continue to beat one's chest. We're better than you are. Well, I get it. I'm part of it. I do think this network is a big issue, and it's hard for me to try to talk about something that I'm a part of, and I was the first person hired on air to go to work for the SEC network, but there was such hullabaloo over the SEC network. There was so much money connected to it. There was such a big liftoff to it that a lot of other people around the country just became very disgusted and envious. Having said that, which conference had the first television network? The Big Ten. The Big Ten network came out of the chute 5 or 6 years ago and has done very well. And the SEC chose not to go up back then. They did now. Since then, the Pac-12 has developed its own television network, not nearly as successful as the other two. The SEC network launch in August was the most successful cable channel launch ever in terms of distribution, in terms of projection. That's resented. Everything the SEC has done is resented, so when the SEC finally falls, and it has this week, people rejoice. Pretty easy to understand. Tim is in Indianapolis. How are you, Tim?
I'm good, Paul. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Steve brings up a really good point. I'm up here in Indianapolis. I think a lot of the issue is just kind of where ESPN drops its magnifying glass as far as what conference they spend the most time with. And with all of the championships, we get it with the SEC. That's not necessarily why I called, though. I kind of want to talk about the College Football Playoff Committee. It seems as though they did use the West as a benchmark this year. If you look at Bama being ranked number 1 with 1 loss, Ole Miss being the highest-ranked 2-loss team. I'm sorry, Mississippi State. Ole Miss being the highest-ranked 3-loss team. Auburn, the highest-ranked 4-loss team, snuck LSU in there. And we know what happened, and I'm not calling to bash them for getting beat. But it seems like they use them as the benchmark. And, they kind of figured that that's not what the CFP was supposed to do. And they were supposed to kind of look at everything neutrally. My question is, evaluating that, do you think the CFP takes a look at this season, they take a look at the bowl season, they take a step back, they revise, they revisit, and what logical changes do they make to avoid, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Alabama being in that top 4?
Well, but here's the problem, though, Tim. You raise a great point. I had some issues with a lot of what they did, but they will evaluate. I mean, these are very smart people with a lot of time on their hands. I'm not talking about the committee members. I'm talking about the staff. And they'll try to figure out where they went. Where they went wrong was really how they handled the public relations. They created the problem with TCU. Now, because of what Ohio State did, they don't have that problem anymore. Had Ohio State lost by 3 touchdowns, the story today would have been, how did TCU get left out? No one cares about TCU today. They're only talking about FSU getting hammered and Alabama losing. So the committee dodged a major bullet there. But I think the reason they did that is they're human beings. Just like, how did Ohio State get in? Should Ohio State have gotten in based on what? Well, you could have put TCU ahead of Ohio State very easily. But the Ohio State story, the human element, losing the second-string quarterback, seeing the third-string quarterback, blowing out Wisconsin, all of these things did matter, and I think they reacted to that. And as far as the SEC West, how could you not believe at the time the SEC West was the best. I mean, it wasn't only the College Football Playoff Committee. It was also the AP poll, which is a totally different set of criteria. I don't know what it is, but it's the human element as well. So, but there were some, though, as you know, who started taking shots. When the SEC started beating each other up, those wins no longer looked that good. I defended it at the time, but the reality was the SEC West was not nearly as good as we thought it was.
Yeah, I think there were some free passes given there as far as, the one-loss teams that were allowed to be able to move up.
Let me defend Ole Miss in one category. Ole Miss was on Wednesday afternoon in Atlanta was not the same Ole Miss team that beat Alabama on October 4th.
Agreed.
Auburn. I think you talk about someone getting a pass. I think Auburn's getting a pretty big pass. This was a school that many believe was a national championship contender, serious national championship contender. Gus Malzahn, maybe one of the best coaches in America. They lost 5 of the last 8 games.
Yeah, and let me ask you this. So what if they look at this and they say, you know what, it's not logical to put 3 teams from this division in the top 4. What if we cut it off and say we put 2 in? TCU gets up there earlier in the year. Now they sort of live in that spot for 4 or 5 weeks. Does that not, by human nature, make it harder to to drop them down?
TCU got caught up, and thanks for same thing like the SEC. They had a little bit of a tough stretch, and they choked away the Baylor game. And had they not done that, they would have been in here. There would have been no keeping them out. I think Florida State is the one. I really believe deep down that committee wanted to leave Florida State out of the playoff. But because you could see it, these were football people: Tom Osborne, Barry Alvarez, Pat Hayden, a lot of others on the committee, and they didn't believe in Florida State. But could you leave the defending champ out, which had not lost a game? Obviously not.
This is the best of the Paul Feinbaum podcast.
It is Feinbaum Friday, and we welcome you back to the show. More phone calls here. We have not had any scheduled guests, but when a member of the family calls, we answer. The big Swagoo has been with us all week. He is hopefully back home in the Big D. And what's up, my man? How are you?
T-Town, what's good with you, brother?
We are just listening to a bunch of callers. Opine.
I know, man. I just touched down in Dallas, man, so I was trying to figure out if everybody had settled down or it was a riot going on in T-Town.
It's been a tough ride today, but I think we're going to be okay. You were in the dome last night. Give us the Swag's take.
I think you know what? First, let me say Ohio State deserved to win the game. They made more plays than Alabama when it mattered. Alabama had a great season, man. They represented the SEC West, and not only that, the schools that were able to play in bowl games, they didn't fare too well, but it's an accomplishment to get there. So start off by saying that. But, yesterday between Oregon and FSU and Ohio State and Alabama, I think both of the teams that deserved to win won the game. And, the fans actually, it surprised me. I thought it would be a little more active, but everybody kind of, was, I won't say okay with it, but everybody realized what happened and, looking forward to next year.
Let me ask you, though, Swag, about the perception. And I realize you've been traveling and you were out at the stadium until the early hours of the morning. But the SEC is being hammered by our colleagues, people around the country. How much of that do you think is deserved?
Well, it's always exciting to people when a giant falls. And look, you could deal with realistic topics or you could deal with fictional tales. The reality of it is the SEC has been dominant here in the recent past, and this year was losing 6 bowl games. It was time for people to come out the woodworks because they've been waiting for this to happen. And I think more than anything, the SEC schools, you know, they probably knew they were being haunted, but
yeah. But do you agree with some that it was overrated?
Overrated by what you mean?
I mean,
by that?
Was the SEC, in particular the SEC West, overrated this year? Everyone said it's the best of the best, but it failed when it mattered most in the postseason.
Yeah. Pete, I'm gonna say it like this. All right, when every year before the season starts, they put strength of schedule up on the board for NFL teams, and they rank them, and they put strength of schedule up for college teams. And my only argument, because you can't deny the fact that the SEC, they played bad, they performed bad in these bowl games. But I still would beg anybody to argue that any other conference in the country had to go through the type of gauntlet that these teams had to go through, and that's between each other. So, and that's a fact. That's not something that is fictional or something that I'm saying because I love the SEC and the conference. A lot of teams play great football, and we've admitted that over time throughout the SEC Nation show and being on your show. But I still believe that nobody had to play and have their stinger ready more than those teams in the SEC West because of the way they were performing. And people may argue that, but top to bottom, that was the toughest division in college football to get through. Not an excuse for them losing bowl games, but we put those rankings out there for strength of schedule for a reason.
You talked to me both on the air and off the air about challenges in bowl games. Every school has its own.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about that, because people paint a broad brush on bowl games, but there is a story behind every game.
Absolutely. It depends on the format of your team. It's all kind of first. The team is built of individuals. Each guy has a different objective, and I think people need to understand that about football. The one common objective is to win the football game. But when you get to this time of the year, you can't help but a 20, 21-year-old kid that may be thinking about their draft status, changing their family's life. You can't help but think about schools that are disappointed about bowl games they played in based on what they were doing earlier this season. And I'm gonna keep saying this and keep reiterating it. I'm not making the excuse for the teams losing the bowl games, but everybody has things going on within their school, and guys' objectives are different. Playing the football game on the field, you should play to win every time you hit the field. But in reality, it's different things going on within each team. And you heard Urban say it last night. I got a young team. I didn't know if we were ready. And at the game after they won, he said we were ready. Ohio State was a hungrier team. They were a bunch of young guys that were out to prove that the SEC was not as strong as people thought they were. And what better team to do that against than Alabama? I don't know if Alabama understood mentally what they were about to get into. And Alabama has talent. Alabama's a good football team. Them losing Ohio State 35-42, they have nothing to be ashamed of. But I don't know if that stinger was raised as much as Ohio State's stinger was raised. And Ohio State had the talented players enough to beat Alabama and probably anybody in the country, just as well as Oregon. There were some teams that didn't get in the bowl game that were talented enough to probably play in the college football playoff and go to the national championship. The way TCU dismantled Ole Miss, they looked like the best team in college football when everybody was watching that game. So perceptions change week in and week out, and you can't judge the strength of a conference or how dominant a conference is because they lose 1 year of bowl games. And I look back over time, over history, and before the SEC, it was somebody else. Before the SEC, it may have been the Big Ten or the Pac-12 that everybody was chasing, and everybody had an X marked on their chest. The climate of college football changes over time. It's just like the game. Plays changes, styles of offenses, styles of defenses. It changes. That's the grandest part of the sport that we talk about and the sport that we watch, is that the climate does change. And when you're at the top of the mountain, it's the most difficult position to be in because everybody's game and level of play is going to be raised every time you step on that field. So, you know, that may have not been understood by some of these SEC schools, that it was more than the bowl games for these other schools. It was the disparage and prove that the SEC wasn't as strong as people thought they were, or the perception was. But honestly, the perception for me doesn't change. A lot of these teams lost to a lot of really good football teams. And if you played this game 10 times, it might go 5-5, it might go 6-4, or this might be the one time that these SEC schools lost out of 10. You just don't know that. But I definitely gotta pay my respect to the teams that won bowl games, because when you get to this point in the season and when you playing in these games, especially for the 4 teams that were in the college football playoff, you earned it, you deserve to be there. And I don't think anybody between Oregon, Florida State, Alabama, and Ohio State was going to go out on the football field and lay down for anyone or each other. I think all of them were playing to try to get the team where it's 12th in Dallas. And that's my take on the whole series and when you look at bowl games across the country.
Vic Swagoo just landing in Dallas. Listen, be safe, be careful, and it was a real treat spending as much time as we did, and we'll do it again very soon, I hope.
Absolutely, brother. Can't wait to get back with y'all. Tell John what's up, man, and do something.
Get it.
You got it, Swagoo. Thanks.
Have a great weekend with the family, and I'll talk to you very soon.
All right, guys.
Big Swagoo landing in Dallas. Just slept in today.
Thank you for listening to the best of the Paul Feinbaum podcast. Tune into the Paul Feinbaum Show every day from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network or on the ESPN Radio app.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.